Hey guys, in this video I will be completing what we had started in class on Wednesday. There's three main things that we were working towards when class had ended, and I've listed them here. One is we're going to be finishing the rocket instantiation, and that's on the LaunchRocket script that we have. Secondly, we're going to be looking at the nose rocket. This is the script that actually propels the rocket to move either left or right. And then we're going to add some code that's going to allow it to destroy objects that we deem destructible with a tag labeled destructible. And so that part of that script we hadn't talked about in class yet, but we're going to add the functionality using the onTriggerEnter and then causing a destroy function on that script. And then lastly, we're going to talk about two types of effectors, a platform effector and then an area effector. A platform effector allows a character to possibly jump from lower or beneath a platform and pass through the object, and when it's on the other side, it will land on top. And this mimics motion of classic platforming 2D video games. And secondly, we're going to talk about area effectors, where character can move into a certain space and it will be pushed by a force, maybe a wind or a water type of effect that you might see in games, and we'll talk about how we can use it to determine the direction that we want and the amount of force that we give it. Okay, so in order to move on with this video, I'm going to give you a starting point for our scripts, and you'll see some links here, and you can pause this video so you can grab them or put them onto code paste, because I didn't want to throw it onto D2L so that it might confuse some people, but I want you to, if you need to, get caught up with the ending spot that we had in class by going to these three different links, the code paste here to get the LaunchRocket.cs. Copy there, we could go to the website, and then you can just copy this guy down like that, and you can start from where we left off. So there's three scripts that we're dealing with: the LaunchRocket, the player move, and that's located here, and the noseRocket.cs. So what are we doing for the instantiation? There's three things that are really important. We need to tell the instantiation code which object or which prefab that we want to use, where to put the prefab, and the rotation of that prefab. And we had done the first two tasks, but you can see that here in our code. I'll look at it in mono-develop LaunchRocket. Here we have this aspect where we're using the instantiate function, and it needs to have a few arguments to use. One is which object we're actually calling, and that's the rocket prefab. Secondly, where we want to put it, and we're using the spawn point object in front of the character's nose, and then quaternion identity. And this is basically a 0, 0, 0, no rotation identity. And we only want to do this one actually when we're facing right. When we're facing the other direction, we want to be using a separate line of code. And so what we can do is, let's work on that aspect. And so when we want to make it shoot from the right, we need to find out what our facing right of our character is. Let's look at it in Unity. Our character by default is looking right, and we need to, this script, the LaunchRocket script, needs to know which way the character is facing. And based on that, we need to make the rocket shoot and look to the right, or look to the left and move left. Okay, so we need to borrow the variable that's available on our character move here. This is a separate script. And so this rocket script needs to be able to look at this parameter here. So let's sort of change what we have here. We're going to start from, this is exactly what we have in that paste version, and let's just do a couple things. Let's get rid of this guy. And we're going to create a separate variable. We're going to create a bool for our own facing right here. What we're going to basically do is we need to grab our player move variable that's also named facing right, this guy here. And so we need to do two things. We need to update this variable, our facing right, at the start. So copy paste this here. I'm going to say that this guy is equal to the game lowercase g game object, and we're going to get the component and from the game object, and that happens to be the player move script. We're going to look at the player move script that's attached to our character, and then we're going to look at the facing right variable and point it to our facing right variable. You're going to get this error that says it's red because it cannot access the variable at the moment, so we need to look at our player move script and turn this variable into a public variable. Again, let me just reiterate. Right now we have an error, and it says that in the LaunchRocket script, the variable that we're looking for, the facing right, is inaccessible due to protection level. Protection level refers to the public, private access level that we give it. And so what we need to do is go to player move, go to the line that has our facing right variable in the player move, and set its access level to be public. That way, when we come back here to our LaunchRocket script, you'll notice that this went from red to the default black. And so we can update this variable, our facing right variable, from the one that's attached to the same character. Great. Now that when we know that our character is facing right or left, we can create some conditions to how we spawn or instantiate our rocket. So we're going to drop down here into update, and we're saying that if we press that fire button, we want to instantiate our rocket. And there's two ways that we can instantiate. We can instantiate rocket going right, and then the next method, and we're going to have it rocket going left. And this is all based on the state of our facing right Boolean. And so we can create a condition to say that if facing right, then we want to instantiate our rocket this way. If we spawn it to the right, then it's going to make the rocket appear to the right of our character, and we're going to send that rocket to move in that direction. The other way is we're going to say else if we happen to be facing left, then we're going to basically do the same thing but modify it just a little bit. We need to change the way that our rocket faces when it gets spawned. We're using the same prefab. We're going to be spawning it at the same point, just in front of our character's nose. But in this case, we're going to modify the rotation, because if we don't modify the location, it's going to come out on this side, and it's going to look like it's going backwards. And so we need to flip or rotate this guy the other way around. This is slightly different than the scale rotate, in that this is actually, we're going to be taking our rocket and rotating it like so, like that. And so what we need to do here is change the quaternion identity to quaternion.Euler, and we're going to rotate it about the, let's see, which one do we want to rotate it? We want to rotate it like in the z-axis, right? We don't want to rotate it in the other axes. I'll give you an example. I want to go 180, but if I do it in the x, then it just flips it up to down. If I do it in the other way, then, oh, I guess one way or the other works. Traditionally, I've been doing it in the z-axis. Yeah, I'm going to keep it in z. So we'll come over here and we're going to do Euler angles, and this is the regular angles that we traditionally work in with geometry, so it's going to be 0, 0, 180. Save and build. This should be facing left now. Save, build, build successful. We can come back here, hit play, click on the Frenchman. So we are able to make it spawn, but it's facing the wrong way. So let's see what's going on. Let's look back here, launch rocket. We are launching it. We're putting it in the correct spot. But what is going on? Let's go back to the Frenchman. What is he doing? Nose rocket. Facing right, facing right. Okay. I'm a big dummy. We don't want this to be in start because this is a one-time check, right? And if at any given time we have our character flip looking one way versus the next, then we need to be up to date. And so we can't just look at it one time. We need to take this guy out here, and whenever we press the button, then we need to update our facing right parameter. Let's try it now. Great. And so our rocket is facing the right way, but it's not moving. It's moving to the right. So we need to go back into our rocket now. So that what we just did was was correct. We're going to go to our nose rocket, and again, this is from the paste code that we had, and you can find it at the at this location here. This is as we left it in class. Let's see what's going on here. So we do have these conditions set up to say that it's going to move in one direction versus the next based on the nose rockets facing right. And so the change actually happens here. So when we do launch this guy, we need to update the facing right by saying inside this else statement, in the case that we're moving the rocket, moving from right to left, we're going to add this line of code. We're going to say rocket instance dot facing rocket instance dot get component nose rocket. That's the name of the script that's attached to the rocket, and then we're going to access the facing right component, and we're going to use our current facing right state that just got updated with, we're going to update it to the nose rockets facing right. So this is all trickling down from the state of the player. When he's facing right, then the launch rocket knows to put it on the right side of the character, and then that trickles down into the rocket itself, the rocket instance. So it's going to spawn it and then tell it to move the other way. Go to play. My game window's down here. Fire to the right. Fire to the left. Let's just briefly review. We have our player move script, and we have the mother of all facing rights. And whenever the character is looking one way, this will be true. And when he or she's looking to the left, then we can see in our player move, when I shift to the left, this guy is going to uncheck. So it knows that facing right. And whenever we press the button that we want for our fire button, it's going to check the state of our player move script, the variable facing right. And whatever that is going to update the rocket launch state here. And if we press the fire button, it's going to say, okay, we need to put the rotation of the rocket either facing to the right or facing to the left. And based on that, it's going to spawn or instantiate that rocket in the proper way. In the case that we happen to be looking left or right, then we need to have our rocket move in that right way, and that's only updated here, and then it'll start moving in the velocity that we say based on the facing of the rocket itself. Cool. Do we need to have this line of code in this guy? Do we need to have it? I don't think so. I think because by default we're going to shoot from the right. Let's see. If I shoot left and they're all going left and I look right, then it's going to stay right. The default is the go right, and so we only need it for the left state. Great. You can see that these are all the instances, and you can that's one of the reasons that we have a variable here. We can reference the ones that we just fired and then tell it to face one way or the other. Cool. So let's go to the next step for our video. We wanted to destroy. So we want to write some code for a nose rocket script to check objects it collides with, and destroy objects with tags labeled destructible. So destructible is one that we're just naming like we did for ground. You can call it something else if you want to, but I'm going to create a tag that has a name destructible and place it onto objects. And when this nose rocket hits something that has a tag labeled destructible, it'll destroy that object and itself, and the rocket itself. Great. So let's just create a dummy destructible object. I'm going to go back into our hierarchy and look for an easy object I can use to destroy objects. Nothing in there. Maybe I'll use an asteroid. And an asteroid is a multiple. I'll apply that. I'm going to slice this guy up and then use that as a spread in the scene. So here we go. That's a small guy. I'm going to increase the pixels per unit so that there's smaller value, let's say 30. Apply. Maybe not big enough. Let's go to 10. Great. Okay, so there's our object. And we're going to have this nose rocket shoot out. Once it collides with it, it should destroy the other guy. So this guy needs a collider. It doesn't need a rigid body because we're not applying any forces to it, but we are going to need a collider so it knows when it bumps into other things. And so we're going to use a circle collider 2D. Make sure that all your colliders in this semester are 2D, otherwise you're going to have some problems. The 3D version does not work well in 2D. So now we have a circle collider there, and I'm just going to call it a trigger. That way we can use the onTrigger enter code. One way or the other, I think that this is going to be okay. Let's hit play, make sure that this guy does not fall down by itself. Great. Right now these rockets are just flying through and not doing anything. Let's create a tag for this asteroid. I'm going to give it a regular name, just asteroid. Go to tag. Right now we can see that there's no tag called destructible. I'm going to hit add tags and then type in destructible. That's the name I'm looking for. You can have lowercase or uppercase as long as you're spelling it the same way, especially in your checks. And so I'm going to write this guy and make sure I assign it, because even though I made the tag, it's not assigned to any objects at the moment. Make that go there. Great. Now, our nose rocket, let's get rid of these guys so they're not on the scene, and I want to spawn them so they destroy. I want to shoot them from his nose first and then have it destroy. So we have the object with the collider. Let's go back into our code look at the nose rocket, we want to write the check here now. We're going to use the built-in Unity code void on trigger enter. So capital O, capital T, capital E, 2D with a capital D, on trigger enter 2D. This function takes one argument and it's a collider 2D. Make sure that's there. And then we're going to assign a temporary variable called col. And we're going to say that we understand that when we bump into something with the collider, we temporarily give it that variable name or nickname, and if we're going to check the parameters of col to see if it matches something. So when that happens, we're going to say if col, or the object that we just ran into, compare tag, if it has a tag called destructible, then we want to do something fun. Destructible. Did I spell it the same way? Is it I? Yes. Destructible. If that's true, if that object has a tag called destructible, then we want to first destroy the other object and destroy ourselves. We can't have it the other way around, because if we destroy ourselves, then it never gets to the line to destroy the other guy. And so we're going to say destroy.col.gameObject. So this line of code tells, let's just say destroys the object with collider, the object with collider tagged destructible. And then the second line of code is we're going to destroy the nose rocket that hit it. And so we're going to say destroy dot gameObject. Destroy. So I hit build. You can go here and do it yourself. Let's try it now. This should work. I'm going to hit play. I might have to jump to make my nose rocket shoot out. Oh. Oh no. So what's going on here? Why did it not run into each other? Let's see. Let's go look at the nose rocket. We know that it's a prefab. It's somewhere along here. Oh, destructible is not defined. Why did it say that? Tag destructible is not defined. Oh, I can't spell, oh my goodness. Okay, this error is not coming from the asteroid itself, but you can notice that I misspelled destructible. I need to go back into my code and make sure that it's spelled right, because it's not going to destroy. Let's take 2 seconds. Destructible. Great. Go here. Boom. Destroyed. So the order of it is, once there's a collision, this function calls itself, and it looks for the tag associated with the object or the collider that it ran into. And then we compare the tag with the name that we wrote here. If it matches, then it goes into the set of brackets, and the first line says we're going to destroy the object that we ran into, col. Secondly, it's going to destroy itself, and itself in this case is the nose rocket, because that script lives on the rocket. Let's go back and try one more time, or yeah, let's try one more time, and then we'll put another set of and you see that other rockets in the scene don't destroy themselves because they didn't run into the asteroid. So let's go ahead and maybe put a couple more asteroids in the scene. I was about to duplicate this, but this is a perfect time to make this guy a prefab. So I'm just going to drag it into my project folder, and you can see that this turns blue and it becomes a prefab, now I can duplicate it and drag it somewhere else. So if I decide to do one change to the asteroid prefab, I can change it to all of the asteroid prefabs. Let's say that this looks really messy, right? So I'm not happy with that. This is kind of nitpicky. I'm going to go into my asteroids, and since this is pixel art, we know that we can change some of the modes to make it look nice. The filter mode used to be bilinear. We changed it to point, and you can see that this has much more definition now. And a couple other things I want to change. Compression to none. They're relatively small files anyways. So the asteroids look a little bit cleaner now. Bam, bam. Great. Let's go back to my character. Why is he getting so many jumps at the moment? I think I might not have updated my player move stuff. Yeah, my player move is slightly different. Why didn't it update? Okay, this assignment you should still be able to get everything done. Disregard that part. Characters should be able to jump around and shoot. Cool. That should satisfy most of the assignment now. What's the other thing? We're going to talk about effectors. So effectors are a new thing that came out maybe a couple years ago in Unity. So it allows your character to jump through platforms from underneath to land on them on top of them. And this is handy because a lot of video games do that type of thing. And so I'm just going to copy this particular object and place it here. And so I'm going to try to get my character to jump through there. Right now, we can see that there's only a box collider, and that's it, and the sprite renderer by default. And so it's showing the sprite. My character, let's see if we can jump. I'm hitting spacebar, and he's not getting through. So again, this is scene, this is game. Right now, I can make this a little bit bigger. I'm jumping, and he is not passing through. So that's maybe not the style of gameplay that I want, and I want him to be able to pass through and then jump on it. I'm going to go to my object that I want to apply this component to, and I'm going to type in effector, and it's going to be the platform effector 2D. Cool. And so it says using collider mask, and you can change this for other reasons, but for the moment we're going to use everything. Secondly, we need to go to our box collider, and we need to turn this thing not from a trigger, because we'll always be able to pass through it if it's a trigger, but we want to check this box that says used by effector. And you'll notice there's a thing that appears over here, this little half dome thing, and that's sort of saying that you can go up and then stay up. Is there anything else we need to change for the platform effector? We can decide which angle that we want to have it in. We can decide to have it using one way or multiple ways, but we only want to pass through from underneath to the top. And we can change the way that someone might pass through, so it's not always just a flat effector if we want to. So you might have platforms that are angly, and that's super fun. So let's just go ahead and try this now. It should work just out of these default settings. He's able to pass through more so than he did before, and then we can have him jump and land. Right now my character movement script doesn't have the ground detection, so that's why he looks kind of funny, but this does demo the effect of being able to pass through and then stand on top. Cool, so you got to use a couple of these platform effector 2Ds in your assignment. It's super easy. Let's just review. I'm going to take this guy off and reset it the way we had it. Right now we have this typical platform. I'm going to add a component, the platform effector 2D. I'm going to turn on the option on the collider that says used by effector, and this thing will appear here, and then we can decide if we want to change anything. In this case, we don't want to change anything. Boom. So this might be a way that if you set up a level that characters can go only in one direction and can't go down, let's say it's just like a whole row of platforms and there's impossible for them to go down. This could be a handy way to do it. Or you can have these things turn themselves on and off so that sometimes you can pass through it. Let's say that we have a moment where we can activate or deactivate this thing so our character can't go through it, and then for some reason after you collect a key, then this platform effector turns itself on, and then your character can move through it, turn itself on. There we go. Cool. Great. So we have now our platform effector, and that works. Let's talk about this fun thing called the AreaEffector. The AreaEffector, what does it do? It requires, just like the regular platform effector, it needs a collider. We need to check the use with effector, and then this AreaEffector, like it sounds, applies a force to a certain area or a direction. And so what we're going to do is maybe create like a hot zone where these asteroids might be able to move around. And I've given you guys, just for demo's sake, because it's nice to give. Oh, that's not the website. D2L. It's nice to give the users a visual feedback, just so they know that when they approach a certain area, that they're gonna be pushed in a certain way. And so I've given you a really cheap sprite to use, and it's gonna be in content arrows. Click on it, it's gonna look like this. And so we're gonna use this just for this demo. I have it here. I'm going to drag it into my project. And you can do some house cleaning later if you want to organize. We can talk about that later. I'm going to drag the arrow texture into, nope, I need to make sure that before I drag any images in there, I need to turn this into a sprite 2D. And it's a single one. I can decide how big or how large it appears by the pixels per unit. Hit apply, and there it is. Okay, so we're going to consider that if I approach this area, it's going to push objects around. If the character moves in that area with a collider, it's going to move that. If the asteroids move into that area, it's going to apply that also. So let's just put it somewhere around here, and let's say that we're going to rotate this guy. I wanted to maybe push it to the right. And I'm just making it look like that. The visual element of it doesn't change how the effector works, but for the user, I'm just giving it some information. So I'm going to have it like this, and then maybe position my asteroids so that they fall and then get pushed, and then bump into the Frenchman, who hopefully maybe will shoot them in time. We will have the arrows here. And so we just have the sprite renderer, which is rendering this image here. We need to have a collider. I'm going to add a box collider 2D. Make sure we're always picking the 2D variation. Add a box collider 2D, and you can see this here. Maybe I'll just make it a little bit bigger so that we can have a little bit of wiggle room. So if anything falls into that space, let's say asteroid falls in here, then it hopefully will be pushed into this area that's defined by the collider. And remember, we said that colliders act as boundaries for our objects. In this case, we want the asteroids to fall into this area, so we need to first check this as is trigger, and then we'll check is used by effector. Then we're going to add AreaEffector 2D. So it's been added there, and we can decide the parameters here. And so we can decide the force angle, force magnitude, and variation. And so let's first look at force angle. Unity is kind of weird about how angles work here for effectors, and they work in global space. They start here at 0, 90, 180, 270. Again, 0, 90, 180, 270. So if you want the angle to be pushing it to the right, then the angle should be 0. If you want the force to be pushing up, then it should be 90. If you want the angle to be pushing left, then it should be 180, and if you want the effector to be pushing down, then it's 270. And you can have all the angles in between, but it's going to clamp everything up to 360. If you have a value beyond that, then it's going to clamp it all the way down to, I think, 359.9. Okay, so we know that we want to be pushing to the right, and so we're going to keep the angle 0, and then we can decide force magnitude. That's how much it's going to be pushing these objects. Force variation is going to be a value that's plus or minus from 0. So it's going to be, whenever something passes in there, it's going to add a value that's 10. So let's say I have a value of 5. It's going to pick between adding 5, any number between 5 and 0 up to 10. So at any given time, it's going to be 15 or 12, 13, 14, or 10. If we have a value of -5, then we're gonna have a force that's gonna be between something between 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10, pushing it to the right. If we set it 0, then it's going to be a constant magnitude of 10. But if we add a variation, then it's going to be a value plus or minus this value here. Great, so let's just set it at 0 right now, just to check out what's going on. We need to add rigid bodies to these guys because we're applying a force to them. And since I added to this asteroid and they're both prefabs, I can go and hit apply and then check out the other prefabs. They all have the rigid body attached to them now. So let's go ahead and try this. We expect this guy to fall down, both of these guys to fall down as well, but then when they hit this box, hopefully we see them move over to the right. Didn't happen. What's going on? Let's go back into the arrows. Used by effector, everything, applying the rigid body. We're going to have, let's set the drag to be 10. Let's see what happens there. So you saw that there's a little bit of dampening there, and this is applied by using the drag, and it slows down other forces that are currently applied to it, but it didn't push the objects to the right that we expected. Let's go to use global angle. Maybe that's it. This option is a new thing for Unity. It used to not have this global angle thing, so maybe they set the 0 angle to be a different angle than I thought. So if we use global angle, then it will consider right to be 0, like I had originally stated. Let's push this a little bit more, because we know that it is pushing to the right now. There we go. It is pushing. Let's go change this to 50. Curious why they're not bumping into my character. Oh, yeah, because we have them as triggers. That's fine. Cool. So we can have this, and let's say that we have another one of these guys. Let's duplicate these arrows, and let's say that this set of arrows is going to push these guys upward. I'm just going to rotate this arrow sets just so I know that I want it to go up. Again, this is just visual control. It doesn't affect how the effector is moving it, because I have this global angle set, and then I'm going to change the angle to 90 to make it go up. And I hope that this guy moves upward. And so now we're at the edge of this box right here, and it seems like this is still being affected by gravity, so there's a downward force on it. And so once it slightly enters this collider area, it's again getting pushed upward. Let's see what happens if we adjust the size of this box collider. So we go up and up and up and up and up and up. And cool. since I had it in game, it's not going to stick, but I'm going to click on this arrows guy again and just change that. Let's see if we can get things to move in a circular pattern. At this point, we have enough information to complete your assignment. We have area effectors, we have platform effectors, and I'm just gonna do this just for fun. Put this guy over here, move up. So when it comes in here, I'm going to shift it to the right, and that force angle is going to be 180. Let's see if we can get this happen. Yep. Cool. So you might, if you wanted to make it move in a circle, then maybe we'll have another one that pushes it down. Make sure that these forces and these box collider areas, maybe you can extend the size of it so that they have plenty of room and are feeling the effect of these effectors well enough so that they get moved around. So it's as long as they are bumping into the collider, they're going to be feeling the force of the effector. It's just showing this guy now. We'll talk about point colliders, or point effectors next week, but yeah, I think you get the idea. Let's see if I can have my character jump around and try to shoot these guys as this thing is, oh no. So my rockets are also being affected by the effector. So let's go. How do we change that so like only the asteroids get affected? You remember this collider mask that we had here? We can go and change or apply a different layer to my character so that, or let's just go into the asteroids. Let's give the asteroids a layer. We're going to add a layer and we're going to call these to be asteroids. This is mainly for rendering purposes, but we can also use them similarly like we do for tags. Again, I selected all these asteroids and I went to layer, add layer, typed in asteroids, it's there now. Go back and I need to assign them. Go to asteroids and then go to my arrows and select collider mask, nothing, and I just want to have the asteroids be affected by these colliders. Now my character shouldn't be pushed around. He should be able to jump around and shoot. Boom. Too easy. All right. Hope you guys have a great weekend. If you have any questions, please email me. If I don't see you again, then have a great weekend.